Now, so far so good, but I'd like to take this a step further. And again, once all of my enemies are killed, I'd like to regenerate another set of 3. So the way that needs to work is I need to actually register when an enemy is killed. When it adds up to 3, I'll create 3 brand new ones. So we'll attach that feature to this rule here, but at first I need to make an attribute under my movie here. Attributes, under game, add, and we'll make it an integer so that it can count whole numbers. Click choose, and we'll name that killed enemies. Okay, so that's going to be the container to hold the information, if you will, that attribute, and it starts at 0. So let's go back into the actors. I'll double click on enemy again, and I'll add another new behavior to when a bullet hits the enemy, it adds 1 to that number. So that would be a change attribute. And we'll just put that just above the destroy. Actually, I'll put it below, I guess. Change attribute, game, killed enemies, 2, game, killed enemies, plus 1. So whatever the score is, it will add it to the 1. I'll just hit my checkbox here. And now this number, when I go back here, killed enemies will increase by 1 every time one of these enemies gets destroyed by the bullets. So let's take this to the next level here. Sorry, double click on that and regenerate 3 new ones based on the fact that 3 enemies have been killed. I'm going to put that set of behaviors inside of the hero. So let's double click on hero. I'll create a new rule. I'll actually name it right away. I'll call it regenerate enemies, and it's based again on the fact that 3 have been killed. So the conditions will be an attribute, game, killed enemies is greater or equal to 3, will regenerate some enemies. So we'll need to do that with the spawn command. So go down here, spawn actor command, spawn actor enemy. Now I need to position it. So I'm going to go about 500 above the actor, and I'll say 50 from the left hand side. And I'll actually say relative to scene on this. So 500 up and 50 over. Let's just see where this is. I'll kill 3 enemies and we'll see where that ends up. Okay, so that's actually a good spot. All right, so you saw that got regenerated after 3 got killed. So I basically have to add 2 more spawn actors down here. So I can duplicate this with my option key down. Let me just collapse some of these. I'll actually call this one shooting bullets. Okay, and we'll collapse that. And highlight that. Option key down on the Mac. Alt key down on the PC. And I'm just spawning another one. Let's just say maybe 550 high. Maybe 100 pixels over, and we'll give that a try. Hit preview, quickly kill all of these guys. Okay, I'm actually going to move it over a bit further. Let's say 200, and this is where it takes a little bit of time, but and you saw I got them right away anyway. So we'll add a third one farther over to the right. Option, click and drag, and let's just say 300. Maybe I'll say 350, just to see where that goes, and I'll bring this one back down to maybe 450. So it's going to be ahead of the other two as it drops. And I think I got a little too far on this one, so let's just try 250. Basically a little trial and error, and you can position them anywhere you want. Okay. So I'm going to save my file right now. And you can tweak these positions a little bit, but basically I've got it going on here. Maybe I'll push this one back over to 150. And just save that. And there we have the regeneration of our enemies once the 3 on screen have been killed. Now this is all fine, but it's not complete. I don't know if you noticed, but it did spawn a new set of enemies, but it only did it one time because I need to reset that killed enemies attribute back to 0 once I've spawned the 3. So we're going to add one more change attribute down at the bottom here. And that will be going to the game, killed enemies, set it back to 0. Okay, so let's save that and try that again. Save it. And I'll hit preview and I'll start killing some enemies. Okay, so I'll kill all 3. And there we go. So you can see here that they will constantly be regenerated. And I may want to adjust speeds and so on to make it a little more challenging perhaps. But everything is functioning here with respect to generating enemies and shooting them down, firing bullets, and moving my player. Let's just go back here now. Let's just drop that scoreboard background into the scene here. I'll just grab that and stretch that over to be the full width. Okay, at this point we're ready to capture and display the score. We'll also do that for the health, but let's start with the score, which is to say every time a bullet hits an enemy, it adds 1 to the score. So I've got an actor here called display score. I'll start just by dragging that up on the screen here. And it's just a white box right now. Let's just go inside of there. And we'll change the color background opacity to 0%. And you click on the chip and just drag the slider over to 0. And now we'll actually add a display score feature in there. So let's double click and we can actually choose display text, which we drag in here. And I'm going to replace hello world with score : white, 30 pixels high, Arial. And let's just take a look and see what that does. Okay, so there you have score. It's not the actual score, but it's where the score will go. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to add a second display text to record the score. But before I do that, I need to have a place to capture the scores. So let's go back in here. We'll go to attributes. And you remember how we did killed enemies. I'm going to click a new, add new attribute, integer, choose, and we'll rename it score. Okay, so that's where I'm going to put score in every time a bullet hits. So there's a couple of parts to that. One is to create the display for it, and of course one here is to capture it. Right now it's 0, so let's go back. I can click on that invisible prototype. We'll edit prototype. I'll add display score, or rather display text. And what I want to add is the contents of that attribute called score. So I double click that. So whatever is in there will appear on screen. Now, if I left it as is, you can see the position is overlapping. I'm going to add 55 pixels from the left I believe that should do it. I tried this once before, which should just shift it off a bit. So let's just see. We should be seeing a 0 after the semicolon. There we go. So because I already predetermined 55 pixels works, I don't need to do trial and error to get that. So this is actually 2 displays in the one actor. This one is the dynamic one that will ultimately change. So if I was to kill something, it should change. But I haven't actually input that behavior yet. So let's go back here. We'll include in the bullets the rule that records when an enemy was hit. So let me double click bullets. So when the bullet collides with an enemy, we will add to the score. So let's create a new rule. So actor events overlaps or collides with actor type enemy. We will change attribute. And that attribute will be the score. Game score to game score plus 1. So whatever it is, it's going to add 1 to its current value. And I click the checkbox, and let's just see if that's going to work. You can see my score is going up, and now we have a score counter. And there we go. So I guess the last thing I'm going to do is deal with the health issue. But now we have a game that shoots and scores and regenerates enemies and so on. So let's just get out of here. Definitely save my file. Now to deal with the health, again, there are basically 2 components. One is the attribute to record the level of health. And again, it's based on whether the enemy comes into contact with the hero or not. And the other thing is to put an on-screen display of our health. So let's start by creating the attribute under Game Attributes. To record our health, we'll add a new attribute. Let's make it an integer so it can record whole numbers. Choose. Double click it to rename, and we'll just call it health. Hit my enter key. So that's where we'll basically keep the health score. Now I'm going to start us off with a health level of 3. So the value of the health is 3. So basically we get 3 tries before we get killed. Now let's go back to our actors, and I'm going to hold that information inside of the hero actor. So we'll start a new rule. Create rule. When actor receives event, overlap or collides with the actor called enemy, we're going to change the attribute. So let's go down to change attribute, and we'll find that game health attribute, and we're going to set it to itself -1. So we'll go down here, game health -1. So it'll take the current score and subtract 1 from it. Now I'll just demonstrate this. It's not quite finished yet because I don't want to go into the negatives, but I'll just save my file and we'll quickly take a look at this. Oh, of course I need to display it, otherwise you're not going to know. Let's go and put the display on. So we've got display health. I'll double click at the start because just like with the score, we need to add some display behaviors. Let's go display text, and I'll start with the word health, colon. Now I'm going to make this one red, and I want to make the background transparent, so I need to go into its attributes for the actor and turn the opacity down to 0. And if we look up on the stage, I'll drag this now. I'll hit play. There's our health. I just need to position it. I'll probably eventually position it using numbers, but for now we'll go by eye, and I'll say about here. So I need to add that second element to the display, which is the actual current status of the attribute called health. So let's go back in here, and I can duplicate this. Option, click and drag. Instead of putting an absolute word in there, we're going to go for the variable game health. Okay, so that will be the score. Now again, the position is currently overlapping, so let's just push this over. Maybe I'll try 60 pixels over, hit my tab key, and we'll take a look at that. Health 2, health 1, health 0. Now you'll see it's actually going to go into the negatives, and that's what I want to avoid. It's a little hard to read too. I might change the color just a bit, but let's stop that. And we'll go back and make some fine tuning. Display health. I'll just lighten this a bit for aesthetics reasons. And we'll go back to the actors. We'll take another look. Okay, it's still a little hard to read, but I'll actually go the opposite direction, and I'll darken the blue. Okay, so now let's deal with that negative issue with the number. Under Hero, we're going to add a condition. Let me click the add, and I'll say attribute. If the game health is greater or equal to 1, as well as having the enemy collide with the hero, subtract 1. So it needs to have two conditions now. So in other words, once it hits 0, this will no longer apply, so it'll stop subtracting. And again, just for the experience, I'm actually going to add a sound here as well. So let me go down to add, play sound. We'll drop that in right under here. And I'll just try that first electronics. Hit effects 03. Save file. And this should do it, but you don't know until you test it out. So let's hit preview. And I can hear the health. And now it should no longer work because it's not reaching both objectives. That's to say this number is not greater than 1, combined with the impact of the enemy with my player. So we'll just reset this. You can see my score is going up. My health, I got hit once, so my health is down to 2. And if I allow myself to get hit, my health will go down to 0. And we'll just stop that there. So I'd like you to build one of these today. I'll just reset it here one more time. And you got to move left and right, and you have to try to kill those enemies before they touch you. And if I get touched 3 times, my health is down to 0. So let me just let that happen. There we go. So let me stop that, and I'd like you to create one of these today. Now your challenge on this exercise will be to figure out on your own how to increase the health for every 2 kills that you make. Every time you kill 2 enemies, the health should increase by 1. So that way you can actually, it's almost like getting a health kit, if you will, or a life pack. So once again, the challenge is to increase the health by 1 for every 2 enemies that you kill using the bullets. Okay, so let me just move around here. See, it went up there because I hit 2. Of course, I can still get hit and lose health points like this. But I'd like you to figure out how to increase the health without the demonstration. You should be able to do it with what you know now. And that's your assignment for today.